Hi, my wood turning friends of the internet. Welcome back to my shop. Today we're going to talk about the humble parting tool. I'm going to show you the different types, how do you use them, when to use them, pros and cons of the different types, and how to sharpen them. Let's get started. Okay, let's have a quick run through the different types. Now here's your standard parting tool. It comes with a lot of sets. It's called a diamond tool, and that's because it's shaped, the profile is shaped a little bit like a diamond. One of the advantages of this is it's wider in the middle and narrower at the top and bottom. Less steel on the wood, the less friction. So theoretically, this tool will not bind as quickly as a regular parting tool. Frankly, I'm not real excited about it because maybe I just didn't ever get used to using it, but that is one of the advantages. Now, one of the challenges of this type of tool is a little harder to sharpen. You've got to sharpen each bevel so it matches right here in the middle, and because the bit it's riding on can be pretty thin, it's a little more difficult to keep it stable to get a nice flat tip. Now, one similar to that but a little cheaper, basically they don't cost as much because it's just a rectangular bar of steel, and that's your regular parting tool like this one. This is one that I still use occasionally. Came in my Harbor Freight set, cheap Chinese set, but the steel is high-speed steel and it works just fine. This is a 1/4 inch. This one is 3/16 of an inch. So depending on what you're using for, sometimes the one that's a little broader is better. Sometimes one a little bit narrower. One that I've gotten used to using a fair amount is this smaller 1/8 inch parting tool. Again, less steel, less friction, and it works well for a number of things. Larger projects, you need something a little heavier. Smaller projects, this works just fine. This is an inexpensive one in that I made it from a piece of. It's inexpensive because I actually made this one in my shop from a piece of high-speed steel bar that's I believe is 3 millimeters by 18 millimeters by 200 millimeters. I'll have a link on my show notes of where you can buy that, and I've actually got a video link up here on making this tool. But I use this one a lot. Another one that I use quite a bit is this beading and parting tool. It's 8 millimeter. Again, this is a shop-made version, so fairly inexpensive. Made from an 8 by 8 millimeter by 200 millimeter bar of high-speed steel. Again, I'll have a link in the show notes and a link above here for the video on making this. But I find this very versatile. It's just a little bit smaller than 3/8 inch, but 8 millimeters is a real common size and easy to find. Another parting tool, a little fancier, is this Sorby parting tool. The thin fluted parting tool has a flute down the top, and with this flute down the top, it has a little fang on each side, so it can actually make a cleaner cut. One of the advantages of this tool over some of the others is it does have a little longer handle, and it's a very nice tool. It's 2 millimeter or 1/16 of an inch. Now the other tool, and again I have this one on my Amazon shop. You can get a more expensive version, but this thin parting tool, 1/16 of an inch, is from Penn State Industries. Frankly, it's not worth trying to make one when you can get one as inexpensive as this, a 1/16 of an inch. You can get them for about $16. High-speed steel. Robert Sorby has one, but sometimes it's almost twice as much. But this one works very well for cutting smaller tenons, finials, ornaments, things that generally less than 1.5 inches in size. One of the primary purposes of using a parting tool is to make a tenon. For that, I like to use a 1/4 inch because I can make a tenon with one pass. The other tool I like is the 8 millimeter. I can even make a larger tenon for larger bowl jaws, for example, again with one pass. That's a little more difficult to do with the smaller ones, the 16th of an inch. This would be a real challenge because you have to make so many passes and then you have to clean it up to get a nice clean flat surface. The 3/16 of an inch is not bad. You might have to take 2 passes on that to get it wide enough. 1/8, again, you're going to have to take multiple passes, so I don't use this one for tenoning as much. So generally I'm going to reach for this larger 8mm. Little trick I want to show you: when you do make an entry cut with soft wood or coarse wood like this this red oak, you want to go directly into the wood. Then after you slice through the fibers, then you drop and take a peeling cut. And form your tenon. And that should give you a nice clean cut. If you start with a peeling cut by dropping the handle low, if you start with a peeling cut by taking your handle low with soft wood, this is what you're going to wind up with frequently. You're going to wind up with a frayed edge. For some things it doesn't matter, but get in a habit of going in parallel with the floor and slicing through the fibers before you start dropping the handle to take that peeling cut. So making a tenon, that's one of the primary purposes of it. Now you can either make a parallel wall tenon, for example, for your normal jaws, for the one-way Talon or the Nova line of chucks. But you can also just incline it slightly and you can make a dovetail. So you've got that dovetail shape by just inclining it slightly to the inside. Another use of the parting tool is for sizing a tenon. For example, sizing a spindle. For example, you might be making a table leg, or you might be making a tool handle. Perhaps you're making a spindle that has a very specific diameter. Maybe you're matching them from one size to smaller to smaller to smaller. So here's how you go about doing that. Using a typical 3/16 or 1/4 inch, you're going to make a sizing cut, and you're going to use some calipers perhaps to size that cut. Now there's a couple of ways to deal with it. You see a lot of people, they'll show you pushing it on when it fits. A better technique is to pull it off. So let me show you how that works. We're going to slowly, carefully slip this over. We're going to hold this in our right hand tool. Then when it comes off, that's the size we need. Then we're going to go further down the spindle, and we're going to have a slightly larger size. So you do the same thing at the middle. And you do that several times, and then all you have to do is use your spindle roughing gouge and join these diameters that you've already got set. So that's sizing. When you do size, you want to use your normal type of parting tool, 1/4 inch or possibly 3/16. You do not want to use your thin parting tool, either the 16th or the 1/8 of an inch. You want something a little wider than those two. Of course, one of the things we use a parting tool is what it's called for is parting off. So again, you want to have your tool rest far enough back that it will support the flat of the tool and not be on this on the slope. You also want it where you're going to be cutting on center when you slice through the initial fibers. So we slice through those fibers so we don't get the frayed edge. Then we can come back and start taking that peeling cut. But after we go about an inch or so, we're going to get some binding, even if you're using the diamond tool. There's still going to be some binding down here. So you basically just step back about a half a tool width. When you get down to about a half inch or so, you start alternating. And part it off. Now, for parting off tenons of less than 2 inches, maybe closer to 1.5 inches, I like to use this thin parting tool. We'll talk about this shape when we go to talk about sharpening. Again, go straight in, drop the handle, and then we're just going to arc in as we lift the handle, arc into the center of the wood, starting to bind, back out, half a tool width, and just alternate coming back and forth. And we part it off. Now, we can use this Sorby, and there's some other manufacturers that have a flute on it. Now, it's interesting to note that if you look at the pictures where they're marketing this, they'll show this thing in this orientation where the tip is way off the tool rest. My suggestion is to use the tool in this direction, which is upside down from what the marketing pictures show and upside down from what the instructions show. But I find that flipping it over in this direction, where you don't have the sharp flute, the edges scratching up your tool rest, and having more control over the tip of the tool, because you don't have to project as far over, that's actually a better technique. I've actually corresponded with Robert Sorby on this, and they referred me to one of their experts that said they didn't use this tool. But they consulted with one or two of their colleagues and played with it over the weekend, and they came back and said, after playing with it a while, they agreed with me that they felt like it really was easier to control by having it upside down from their instructions. They also said that in 20 years, nobody had ever questioned their instructions before. Let me demonstrate what a clean cut you can get with this particular tool. Again, when you go down a little ways, it'll start binding, so come out and do a half a tool width. And this tool can give you a very, very clean parting cut. That said, I rarely use it. I just find it easier for me to use the smaller one, unless for some reason I feel like I need the longer handle for leverage. This short one, again, you can't part off at anything much larger than 2 inches, because it starts pulling on you as you extend over the tool rest. You just don't have enough leverage of the part that you're holding on to versus the part that's on the other side of the tool rest. So you need to have some leverage when you're hanging off the tool rest, even for a parting tool. You can use vernier calipers, but again, make sure those edges have been rounded off. Because this is a one-handed operation, I'm supporting it with my arm. And that's how we can size an appropriate tenon. And once we get it sized, of course, we can bring it back down to appropriate length. spindle turning, you frequently go at higher speeds than you do with bowl turning. When it comes to parting it off, I reduce the speed down to somewhere close to 1,000, 1,200. Another technique to give yourself a little bit of relief area is what they call doing a fishtail. That is, you move your tool back and forth to give yourself some clearance and maybe kind of wiggle it a little bit. Just so. Another use of the parting tool is for making recesses, perhaps in box making, for example. And this is where the 8mm beating and parting tool works out very well because it's got a little wider, so you can go through it and take a bigger cut. Like that. Now I'm not going to get heavy into the other advantage of the beating and parting tool, but for a wide parting tool, such as the 1/4" tool, you can actually use it for cutting off the ends if that's the tool you have in your hand, similar to a skew, by just kind of coming along the edge like that. And that's it's convenient when that's the tool in your hand. Now with a beating and parting tool, you can actually make beads with it, and it does very well as a beating tool. So as a beating tool, I find this works it's far easier to use than a skew. It's less likely to have a catch. And for many beads, actually, I find it easier to use than a spindle gouge. But that's a topic for another video. This is one of the parting tool is one of the simplest tools to sharpen. So let's look at that right now. You're simply going to use your platform and set it for your profile so it touches all along the edge. Now, what angle should you sharpen? The experts, different folks will give you different recommendations, but generally speaking, the included angle, that's the angle on both sides, should generally be somewhere between 40 and 50 degrees. When you're actually setting the platform, it's of course half that, so 50 degrees. Included angle would be a platform angle of about 25. So you get it where it's going to be flat, and just simply slide it back and forth, keeping this absolutely perpendicular. Flip it over on the other side. Be very careful not to rock it, or you'll wind up with a rounded edge, and you don't want that because it won't track very well when you cut. And with a beating parting tool, same profile, same thing. Set it where the full length touches against the wheel and just simply slide it back and forth. Being careful not to lift the handle. I like to keep this handle on the ferrule, not down here where you have a tendency to leverage it up and off of the platform. Now when you finish on some of these tools, frequently you'll get a wire burr along the side. Here's some examples where you can see the burr, but you simply take the honing tool and just hone the sides. The side that you had up is going to have a slight burr. Not a bad idea to take that burr off with a CBN or a diamond hone, like this CBN hone I got here from Woodturner's Wonders. And it really is that simple. Now for the 1/16" parting tool, same way, except you're going to have a curve that follows the wheel, and all you really need to do is, you don't have to have it flat here, just lift it until it follows that curve, and then go back and forth until you get a nice flat edge. Now in this case, I have put this little bevel here to make it less likely for me to have to adjust the tool rest, and it also gives a little more support to that edge rather than having it very, very thin. But again, that's a matter of personal preference. Some people advocate using the Wolverine arm and getting it set like this and using it, and that works okay for a short tool handle like this. It's fine. The problem is it can get you into trouble if you don't pay attention. If you get a larger tool like this, the further out you get, the further you get down on the wheel. If this cam lock should slip on you, and especially if you got a stone wheel and this thing slips down, very bad things happen. So I advocate using a platform for these tools. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, make it easier for your wood turning friends to find it. I very much appreciate your feedback and input. I appreciate your suggestions for videos. So if you got a video suggestion, leave it in the notes below. I especially want to hear from you new visitors that have never been to my channel before. If you find it helpful, leave a note below. Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.